Hi, welcome to IS Factor, and we are discussing the 2024 UPSC Mains GS Paper 1 discussion. And with me, Arjun R Shankar. And when you compare the question paper, it's a very interesting to note that this time the question paper was very simple. Compared to the previous year, when you see that previously the question papers at one point of time used to be very lengthy, where it was even difficult to remember the key points. And this time it is very simple framed questions, provided you should know the answer. So, in such situations, what will happen? In such situations, when the question paper is easy for everybody, what happens is everybody writes it well, and whoever writes the best points without losing the edge, the demand of the question, will make through. So everybody knows the answer. So whoever will write the best answers, the way that they have asked, the way the demand of the question, according to the demand of the question, I think those people will make it to the exam. And let's take a close look at the exam question paper. So I'll discuss each and every question. I have the question paper, so we'll go through each and every question right now. And you can also take a look at this. So this was a question from, so you can see that there were, out of the 20 questions, you can see that out of the 20 questions, you can easily see that some of the questions, the 10 questions were for 10 marks. 10 questions were of 10 marks, where you have to write for 150 words. That means most probably you can write up to 1.5 pages or 2 pages. And the rest of the questions were for 250 marks. The rest of the questions were for 250 marks. So when you get 250 marks question, you have to write, 250 words question, where they were asking for 15 marks. So that was actually for 15 marks, 250 words. So this was the most important thing. So take a look, just go through the questions first. There was a question from ancient India, especially from the Vedic and later Vedic period. So as expected, 10 marks from history. And again, they asked a question on art and culture, especially from the Pallava art and architecture, which was a very expected question this time also. And they asked another question from modern India, where they asked about the Quit India movement and the See, I would say that such questions, what were the events that led to Quit India movement, point out at this. All these are basic NCRT questions where you can get it from the 8th standard. This is 8th standard NCRT question. It's very simple, but you have to get in the right points. That's it. And moving on to the next was, what is the sea surface temperature, or the SST? Only if you know the answer, you can write it. What was the relating to SST? And again, this is from geography, and this is a question from urbanization. Why do large cities tend to attract migrants? So this is also a very easy question. If you know, if you read newspapers, you must be having a lot of points with you. You could have easily written that. And again, for a question from geography, what is cloudburst? Current affair question. Explain simply what is cloudburst. Explain, simple. That's it. And what is the concept of demographic winter? You must have heard about demographic dividend, but I don't know how many of you must have heard about what is demographic winter. So this is something very interesting. This is also from current affairs. Many countries like Japan, Italy are recording demographic winter. So definitely that is also a current affair question. And moving on, between the gender equality, gender equity, and women's empowerment, again, the role of women and women organization. You can see that's a question on women, the role of women. And again, a question from Indian society, intercaste marriages and interreligious marriages. All these are pretty basic questions. If you know, if you read newspapers, you have an idea. You can easily write this, quote this answer. And next is regarding the development of NGOs, the collaboration between government, NGO, etc. So all this is again from society. You can see the role of NGOs, self-help groups, etc. These questions are from those areas. And again, from Indian art and culture, again history, art and culture, regarding the Chola architecture. This is also a very expected question. They have asked Pallavas and Cholas. So again, you should know that, again, you know that Ponniyin Selvan, the movie, was also a pan-national movie making. So definitely Cholas were in the news. So definitely current affair. I would call it as a current affair question. And from world history, you have another question regarding the First World War. There was a question on that. And and there is a question on Industrial Revolution in England. You can call it as a world history question, and also you can call it from modern India, especially the economic impact of British rule. You can actually mark this question from that area. You can answer from that perspective also. And next was regarding the groundwater potential of Gangetic Valley, a question from geography, especially what are the reasons. And again, from geography, you can see this phenomena. This was also in the newspaper, current affair question. Aurora Australis and Aurora Borealis. Again, India also witnessed these aurora. Again, current affair question from geography. What is a twister? Why the majority of twisters? I don't know how many of you must have heard about twisters. You must have definitely heard about tornado. So something related to this, I would say this is also a current affair question from geography. This is also a current affair question from geography. And again from regionalism and society and diversity, from that aspect, there is another question about what is regional disparity and how is it different from diversity. And again, you can say marginalized group, society, the underprivileged group. So a question from that, again question from globalization and relating to women. This is actually relating to women. Again a question on women, two questions on women. And again there is a diversity and India's. So there is from society and a deeper concept of marginalized group, the backward classes, the underprivileged section is one such thread, and also women, role of women. There are two important questions on women, history and geography. I think a perfect mix of all the questions here. So I should say that it's actually on the easier side, but if you can complete 20 questions, that's a different thing. Only if you complete 20 questions, there is a hope for that. But if you write the best points, it is really a good thing that you can definitely do in this year. Okay, so let's discuss some of the important points regarding the first question that we are going to see is, let's see the question. It's for 2 pages, so definitely you know that every question when you write, whether it is 2 pages or 3 pages, you know after the question, even if it is a small thing, you write a small introduction. At least in the one line, 2 line, you will write an introduction, and you'll also write a conclusion. And rest of the thing that you have to write, you will write the answers in this page. So knowing how much page to write is also important. Yeah. So let's take a look at the question and underline the changes in the field of society. So take a close look. This is ancient India, from society and economy of Rig Vedic period to the later Vedic period. So you have to basically write down about, you give an introduction on this and write very clearly what have they asked. You have to only write about the society and the economy of both Vedic as well as later Vedic. You can even draw a table, or even you can bring in the points. It's up how you write it. So you should also take in the most important points you can take. So you can bring in definitely the first point, you can bring in the Varna system. You know that in the Vedic period, it was actually based on, you can actually say it was based on Varnas, or based on occupation. And in the later Vedic period, the Varna system became more rigid. That means Shudras were at the low, and the Brahmanas, Kshatriya, Brahmanas and the Vaishyas came in. So again, the Varna system you can mention, and you can even bring in the patriarchy. Even though it was patriarchal society in the ancient Vedic time, but later on it was a more rigid patriarchal society. You can also bring in the aspect of women's status in this. The women used to have a good position in the Vedic period, but in the later Vedic period that actually deteriorated. You can bring in this, and maybe you can even bring in the concepts of if you know, you can bring in the Brahmavadinis. It's also very important. You must have heard about the Brahmavadinis, and you can see this Brahmavadinis. That means they were women who were dedicated themselves to the Vedas. So they were dedicated themselves to the Vedas, and you can also bring in the concepts like terms like Rishikas. They were women like Rishikas who were actually poets, female poets who were composing Vedic hymns, etc. Like you can say Apala. You can bring in the examples of Apala, Ghosha. Again, you can bring in the examples of Ghosha and Lopamudra. So all these are examples that you can bring in. And later on in the later Vedic period, the status of the women actually decreased. And you can even bring in the cities. So it was actually agriculture was actually a pastoral society. Ancient time, especially the Vedic time, was a pastoral society. But later on, there were much more development beyond rice and wheat, etc. It was more of a urban thing. And the concept of cities, more urbanization came in the Vedic, later Vedic period, it was not there. So you can bring in society, all these points you can add in society, and from trade and other aspects also you can bring in other points like you can add in agriculture. You can add in agriculture, as I said, pastoral. Now it is more beyond pastoral. New occupations started to come. Previously, you must have heard about metal workers, and they used copper and bronze, and now they are new people like carpenter, blacksmith, goldsmith, etc. So a new people started to actually come in, and trade centers, new urban centers started to come in. So the Brahmavadinis, Rishikas, and Sabhavati. So Sabhavati is the group of women who were actually participated in debates and assemblies, just like we say Sabha, Samiti, and Vidata in the ancient time. So if you can bring in all the points, definitely that would have been a very good answer. So make sure. So definitely bring in the Varna, patriarchy, women, cities. So it was just 150 words. So or you can bring in different type of points. So economy, agriculture, new occupations, trade routes, urbanization. So bring in all these points. I'm sure if you brought in all this, the answer would have been a very good answer. So that was all about the question number 1. And moving on to the question number 2, it's regarding the Pallava architecture. So we'll actually take a close look at the estimates here, where you can actually take a look at this. The Pallavas of Kanchi, the contribution of Pallavas of Kanchi to the development of art and literature in South India. So the question is very short. For 2 pages or 1.5 pages, all you have to write is, you have to write about Pallava. So write a good introduction about Pallava, and then you have to mention, only write about the art and not architecture. So you can write art, architecture, and literature. Both aspects you have. Your answer should have both points, art and literature separately. So first of all, you can write a very good introduction about Pallava architecture, because you can write about the evolution of the Dravida architecture. You can say it's a classic example of the Dravida architecture. You can easily mention about the Dravida architecture. And then you can write about the transition of temples from rock cut. You will write to structural temples. Now we have more structural temples like this coming into the phase. So transition from rock cut to structural is a very important point. You will definitely write, and most importantly, make sure that you write about all those important points that you will definitely bring in here. Will be the Kailasnatha temple in Kanchi. You will write definitely about the Kailasnatha temple, and you can also mention about the most important being the Kailasnatha temple, and you can also mention the shore temple. Take a look at this. You can mention the shore temple here, and the Pancharathas. You can say the monolithic rathas. It's called the monolithic rathas. You can add the point. The Pancharathas of Mahabalipuram, and the shore temple, and even sculptures. You can write Arjuna's penance. When you bring in all these words, you get more points. Arjuna's penance, the Arjuna's tapasya, and the descent of the Ganges, all these are points. The descent of Ganges, you will write this point. And so these are some of the important points that you will bring in here. So next is, you will write about the monolithic rathas, which is something that I've already told you. And next is regarding the same thing that you will write about the monolithic rathas, the painting. The majority of the paintings that you can see in Sittana Vasal, there is a cave which is very famous, and you can see Pallava paintings in Sittana Vasal. And so these are, you can write all these points definitely for architecture, and definitely you can also bring in points like literature. You can bring in literature points to this as how you add it. You can write the evolution of Sanskrit and Tamil, because Pallavas were not only patrons of Tamil, they were also patron of Sanskrit, and most important, Kanchi. Kanchi was a learning center, very, very important. Just like say, Kanchi was a very important learning center, which is also literature. And King Mahendra Varman itself was a great literate person, man of literature. And the famous people who were in the courts like Dandin, and Kirat Arjuniya is a very famous work by Bharavi. All of them were in the Pallava court. And you must have heard about the Alvars and Nayanas that brings in Bhakti literature and Bhakti scriptures and all part of this Pallava. And the Pallava script itself, Pallavas had a very important script, which is the Pallava script, which was, you can call it as the another inspiration of the script called Grantha in Southeast Asia. And the other part of the world, you can see the Grantha script and the Khmer. It's very important. The Khmer. So all this, sorry with the pen, I think. So if you can bring in all these points, either of the rock cut, the architecture, and the important aspects of literature, that would have been a very good answer. So that is all about this one. And moving on to the third question, again from modern India. What were the events that led to Quit India movement? Very simple. Point out its results. So what you'll write an introduction on Quit India, and what is the demand of the question? One, you should write what were the events, number one, and what were the results. So first you will write about the events, and then you will write about, first you will write introduction, then you will write about events. You know that why again, Second World War is a very, very important thing, because Lord Viceroy, Lord Linlithgow made India a participant to the Second World War without the consent of India, and Congress was opposed to this. Congress opposed to that. So definitely Second World War was a big reason, and the failure of Cripps mission. Cripps mission was set by Linlithgow. Cripps mission also failed because it granted a lot of opportunities for India and said we should participate, we should help in the Second World War, but it did not guarantee the complete independence. So Cripps mission's failure was also a part. And due to the Second World War, it was all-round war going on. There was a rampant food shortage and inflation, which was again an event, which was again the people's discontent. And Japan's rapid advance in the Southeast Asia was also a threat, because ultimately British had a fear that what if Japan could have invaded India. So this is also an event, and Mahatma Gandhi's most popular do and die was also an important point that you'll write here. So these are all some of the most important points that came up for this, and definitely, and if you take a look at this, what is the result? You know that Quit India movement, you must have heard about Usha Mehta's, lot of people, the British suppression of Quit India was very popular. Most of the Indian leaders were arrested, and most of the people went underground. And you must have heard about the famous radio announcer Usha Mehta. And then you can see mass arrest and repression. A lot of people were arrested. Even Indians made sure that the British administration was disrupted. Again, the British rule weak. It was a psychological blow to the British that it is time for them to leave India. So psychologically it was a blow, and again violence and repression is something, and legacy of mass mobilization. You can see civil disobedience type kind of a movement was there. Mass scale movement was actually happening, and these are some of the important results of this. If you can bring in all these points, definitely with a good conclusion and introduction, I think again this is an answer that could have been easily gotten. Moving on to the next important question that we are discussing is the sea surface rise. What is SST, or sea surface rise? This is what is the concept of SST, and how does it affect the formation of a tropical cyclone? So the question is simple, and a lot of people who believe that this year you will see that there were a lot of articles, current affairs from geography, where world's oceans suffer from record-breaking year of heat, warming up to climate change. Why do global sea surface temperature matters? So all this is not a new question. This is, I would say, this was from the current affairs. So what is this sea surface temperature rise? You have to understand. So you see, you must have seen the ocean layer. So in simple, it is the rise of the sea waves or the sea, not in the, you can call it as the upper layers, the upper layer of the sea. It is actually getting heated. It is actually getting heated, and this heat is creating cyclones also. So first of all, you should write what is this SST. Second, you have to write how is it creating the formation of a cyclone. Okay, so take a look at this, and first of all, you can see the sea surface temperature refers to the increase in average temperature of the upper layer of the ocean. As I said, this is the ocean, and there is two way of how you calculate this temperature. and you must have heard about the skin temperature. There is something called the skin temperature. They have something called the skin temperature and the bulk temperature. You actually have, there are various ways of measuring the temperature. So skin temperature means it's the upper layers of the ocean and not into the depth. When you take bulk temperature means you go into depth and find out what is the temperature in detail. So basically the upper layer of the ocean, the temperature is rising. So this is sea temperature, surface temperature rise. And most importantly, you can say this, one of the most important reason is, we would say, it's the global warming. It's the global warming because and the most important being greenhouse gas emissions. It's the greenhouse gas emissions because oceans absorb excess heat trapped in the atmosphere. So imagine that this is the atmosphere. What will happen is the oceans is actually absorbing the excess heat like this. It is absorbing the excess heat from the atmosphere due to the greenhouse gas emissions. When the global warming, the temperature is rising, the atmosphere temperature is also rising, and the ocean surface is actually absorbing this temperature. So one of the most important thing can be global warming and greenhouse gas emissions. So this is something that you should know. And as I said, there is something called as I've already told you, there is something called skin. You can say a skin and the bulk temperature. As I said, skin temperature is basically the top layer of temperature, and the bulk temperature means at the depths. So close range, you can see the SSTs have a temperature. So please mark the temperature of 26.5 degrees. It is the threshold. You know what happens? You can see when the temperature atmosphere is having this 26.5 degree, you can see that the height, when this temperature is actually recorded here, the atmosphere becomes unstable. The atmosphere becomes unstable, and the absorption process is actually happening here. And you can see the moist and buoyant atmosphere. When 26.5, the atmosphere becomes moist and buoyant. If you can bring in all this, vocabulary, that will be and also due to the low vertical wind shear. So what is this wind shear? Wind shear means the change in the wind speed with altitude. It is actually horizontal as well as wind shear. You can see it is called as the wind shear. It happens both from vertical as well as horizontal. It is a change of, you can clearly see it is the change of the wind speed or wind direction when you can see over a very short period, and it changes the direction of the wind. So that is something that you have to know. So and now the next important thing is how does this create tropical cyclone is the next important. So you should see the most important point for one of the most important for cyclones is warm ocean water is the main ingredient. Please, there is already sea surface temperature rise, so warm oceans is again a very, very important point that you should write. The reason why it is the primary energy source for tropical cyclone, warm ocean. And already, as I say, 26.5 degree, you can say 26.5 degree is already noted here, and it creates a buoyant atmosphere. So what happens is it creates a wind shears. The wind actually takes a deviation, wind speed deviations, and you can say convective clouds also happen. There is another important point that you'll write here. You'll write about the convective clouds. Also, there are another important thing called the convective clouds. So all these, the buoyant atmosphere, the convective clouds, the wind shear, moist atmosphere, warm ocean water, everything creates the tropical cyclones. If you can add all these points, that would have been a good answer. So that was regarding the fourth question. And moving on to the next important question is, why do large cities tend to attract more migrants is an important thing that they've asked. Something that you can ask, why do large cities tend to attract more migrants than smaller towns? Discuss in the light of conditions in developing countries, and maybe you can have, you know this question from urbanization. There are many challenges. So the question is, why do large cities attract more migrants than smaller towns? So there is large cities and smaller towns. So you have to basically find out answer, why is this migrant happening? Lower town and smaller towns. Discuss in the light of conditions in developing countries. So that is very important. So before we move on, you should definitely know about the developing countries dynamics. So you should definitely mark the points and you will write an introduction on that. Then you will, something about developing countries is that there is uneven economic growth. When there is a city or when there is a rural area, you can always take a look at that. Whenever there is a city or an urban area, you can see that there is an uneven economic growth. Means cities and urban areas, bigger towns tend to grow faster. Rural area is not growing that faster. So there is an economic imbalance here. And you can see developing economies often experience uneven growth. Like major cities and urban area will develop more faster because more investment, everything will come there. Rural areas will grow slower, and that itself is creating an imbalance. Then limited infrastructure in rural areas is also a very important point that you will add here. So again, this is very popular in developing countries because rural areas are always rural. That's why they call less development. And unpredictable monsoons and climate change, and also over dependence on agriculture. So what happens is a lot of people who depend on agriculture, failure of monsoons, climate change, all these reasons, they lose money, and what happens is there is all round migration of. So first of all, in light of developing countries, this dynamics is also very important to write. If you can write this, very good. And then you can write, maybe bring in, why do people more migrate people from other people? I would say this is a very basic question from NCERT. This is a very basic question from NCERT. The push factor and pull factor, you'll write what are some of the important push factors and what are some of the important pull factors. Definitely you will write about economic opportunities. You will write more manufacturing industries, more services, construction, everything is happening and people get higher wages there. And specialized industries like entertainment, IT industries, manufacturing only happens there. And better infrastructure service, if you go there, you get more services and more social community and more opportunities. And definitely, so these are some of the important push factors, and definitely from this you can mark it as the pull fact. The pull, you can say these are the important pull factors that we discussed, were the pull factors which pulls people. And why is the push factor? That means people are pushed away from the rural areas. Means you can mark in definitely about the poverty and limited opportunity in the rural area is an important thing. Then you will write about the agriculture challenges. As I told you, monsoons, climate change leave them in an uncertain situation, conflict, displacement. So all this is actually pushing away people from the rural area to urban area. So this was a very simple question. You could have easily got the major points out of that. Okay, so moving on to the next important one. The sixth question is regarding the cloud burst. Explain. I would say a question from geography. This was also a very easy question because current affairs. Take current affairs. You can see cloud burst in Himachal Pradesh. You will see death toll to 647 people missing. Landslides kill. Cloud burst killed 13 in Himachal Pradesh. Himachal Pradesh cloud burst and flash floods. Even you must have heard about Kerala, Wayanad. So all these are landslide, but you can see cloud burst was Himachal Pradesh. It got national attention. That is why they asked this question. Very simple. You should definitely, what is the phenomenon of cloud burst? You can just explain what cloud burst and what are the reasons. So it's an extreme event. Very important. You should write extreme event characterized by a sudden and intense downpour of a rain over a localized period within a short period. So you can see that you can see thunderstorms. It's an extreme intense downpour in a localized area. So this is the localized area over a short period of time. You can even say it is defined as exceeding 100 millimeters or 3.94 inches per hour, or a relative small area is what they call it about the cloud burst, and the main important reason for cloud burst. And there are so many important reasons for cloud burst also. You can see orographic lift. One of the most important thing is orography. Orography means mountain. You can say that the mountains, moist air is forced to rise over the mountains. And what happens is you will always, cloud burst is always characterized in the atmosphere. You have is you create thunderstorms. Thunderstorm is very important. So orographic lift, the moist air from the mountains create thunderstorms which can create cloudburst. And you can say convective instability. So you can also say there is a convective instability in the atmosphere. This is also an important reason. And convergence of air masses. So you know that there is a, you can see that there is a formation of the cumulonimbus clouds, which can actually create thunderstorms and create cloudburst. You see that you can see moist air is actually coming from this. You can see the moist air can come from the plains, and also you can see the cooler airs. So from the plains, moist air can come, and from the mountains also there can be cool air. So there is cool air from the mountains. So there is the warm, moist air from the plains. So what happens is when this cool air and the moist air is convergence, the air masses is converging, it can create disturbance and large thunderstorms can also come in, and that can create cloudburst. So very important. These are some of the ways you can create cloudburst, and it can create in flash floods. Very important. It can create flash floods and landslides and soil erosion. So predicting cloudbursts is very difficult, but still you can use early warning systems and all these things to prevent all this thing. It can be prevented, but predicting it's very difficult, but definitely early warning systems can be depended on that. So that is one such area where you can actually be, you can clearly have an idea on this. So this was cloudburst, and you could have easily, I should say this was an easy question. You could have written current affairs question. If you can write all these points, that will be very, very good. So moving on is the concept of demographic winter. See, what is this demographic winter? Basically, this is the question. What is the concept of demographic winter? How many of you have heard this term called demographic winter? So, first part is what is the concept of demographic winter? Second is the world moving towards such a situation? Elaborate. So, first of all, let me tell you that this is also a current affairs question. All of you must have heard about demographic dividend, and now everybody is talking about Europe's demographic winter. And you can say the vulnerability of demographic winter in South Korea. Demographic winter has fallen on France. So what is basically this demographic winter? Let's take a close understanding of this. So I've given a very good analogy about this. Imagine that there is a good village, and there are various couples, people living in this village, and the village thrived with large young population. Basically, they are having a lot of children. Everybody are having a lot of children, and the children, family, everybody is actually having a very good time in that. And the village thrived with large young population who could work, support the elderly, and keep the community vibrant. Imagine that this is the couple. They are having a lot of children, like 3-4 children in the villages. So everybody was having children. So what happened is after some time, the old population, it's called the replacement level. It's called the replacement level. That means the old population, which should be replaced with the young population. So there is more number of young population than the older population, so that large young population can work. They can work, and they can support the elderly and keep the community vibrant. So this is an ideal situation. Where how you should have this is absolutely an ideal situation of how it should be. But what happened is, now after some countries around the world, especially take a look at that, the village, they are not having many children, most probably 1 children or no children. So couples in this village start having fewer and fewer children. Over time, the number of young people dwindle while the elderly population grows larger. So you can see the old population and the young population. The old population is increasing and the young population is less. So there is no vibrancy at all. So there are fewer people to work who contribute to the economy, and more people who need care and support. The village population started to shrink, and the future is uncertain. This situation is called as demographic winter. Winter means it's very cold, or it's even symbolizing nothingness or coldness. So I think with this both examples you are very clear about this is, and most of the countries you can say, I think you can easily, if you know the question, you could have easily written this answer. And most of the countries, like developing countries, are having good number of children and good number of younger population. So, but you can see in the developed countries, more developed countries, the young population is decreasing, and this is creating a demographic winter. It's a very dangerous situation when the world will not have young people. So, you can see Japan and Italy are facing a demographic winter, and France has also fallen in. And many countries are already experienced below replacement. Replacement rate means older generation is replaced by younger population. Is less than 2 point per children per women. And developing countries, the rate is it's actually above the replacement level, but in the future that is also a big concern. So maybe if you can bring in all the points about demographic winter, I think that was a very good way of making the answer sound good. So that was regarding that question. And moving on to the next question is regarding a question on gender equality, gender equity, and women's empowerment. You have to distinguish. Very simple question. If you can bring in examples, that would be really, it will be very easy, because distinguish between gender equality, gender equity, and women's empowerment. Women's empowerment, you already know. Why is it important to take So, two part of the question. First of all, you should write the three differences. Three differences, and if you can bring an example for each, then your answer will stand solid. And the later part, you should write why it is important to keep gender concerns for design and implementation of programs. So to write about this, so gender equality implies that all genders have equal rights. So you can remember, like it's like equal pay for equal work. It's all genders have equal rights. All genders are equal. Equal pay for equal work is an example. Now, gender equity recognizes that historical and social disadvantages have created unequal starting points for different genders. Like this is the starting point. It's the historical way, because say some genders, this is the starting point. Some genders have already started and some genders have already reached here. So now the new starting point has come. So you say some genders X, Y have already reached here, but some of the other genders like A or B, some genders have already very backward. So they have different starting points. So that means they need to get more equity. Gender equity means some genders they have historical disadvantages have created. So some of them are very advanced, some of them need more support. That means some are here, some are here. So we need to make them here. We need to make them stand here in the same point, so that we need to bring in that equity. Take them up as gender equity. Like you can say, give scholarship for girls' education. It's also a gender equity. It's an example of gender equity. Give a scholarship for, and women empowerment, definitely it's the increasing women's self-reliance, autonomy, and agency. All this is part of the syllabus itself. You increase, you create an SHG. You must have heard about self-help group. It's already there in the UPSC syllabus. Try to bring in these points. It will be really good if you can bring in this point. So self-help group, etc. So women's empowerment refers to the increasing women's self-reliance. So I think this is also a clean point. You will bring in these small points and write an example. That is great. And the next important point is why. Why they should be brought in. Because definitely, if you will, gender concerns is very important, because only then you can promote equity and fairness. That is one. And in order to make sure that correct benefits go to the different society, gender concerns are very important. So to right penetration or right targeting or right beneficiary, you need the correct gender concerns. So again, and in order to address root causes of inequality, if you want to address the root causes of inequality, definitely you need to have the gender concerns should be taken. And also promotes women and gender equality. To promote gender equality, women's empowerment, and also ethical and human standards like international charters or an ethical and human rights obligation to make sure that the genders are growing neutral and they are uplifting. So for all these reasons, it is very important that you write, you take gender as a concern. So for equity, fairness, addressing the road reality, to create women empowerment, to make sure the correct benefits reaches, to create community participation. To have community participation, gender concern is very important. To meet ethical and human rights obligations, lot of points, 8 9 points, that is more than enough for you to get a very good mark in this. And now the next important thing is regarding the again a society question. I think this is very easy question, you can actually write it. Intercaste marriages between castes have which have socio-economic parity have increased to some extent, but this is less true of interreligious marriages. First of all, I don't know whether you understood the question or not. Get this question very simple. Maybe understand this as part of this. Imagine that there are two castes called X and Y. I'll just explain the situation. X and Y are different caste of same religion. Say it is actually from Hindu religion itself. Both of them are Hindus, but one is X and one is Y. What is happening is both of them have parity. What is parity? Both of them are high caste. In the terms of social level, both of them, X is a very high caste, Y is also very high caste, who has immense belief that they are very high caste. Even from economic perspective, from the perspective of money, you can see X is also, people of X are very rich, Y are also rich. So marrying, previously X and X used to marry, and Y used to marry. And now what happens is socio-economic parity. They are socially high and economically high. People have started to marrying X and Y. The marriages of X and Y has now become common. It is actually increasing because of this parity. But what happened is such marriages like X and Y marriages are not as popular when it comes to, say, two religion, X and Y. Another type, say marriages of, say, let's take in Y and K. Let's take a two example, marriage between two people called Y and K. It's marriage between two people Y and K, or Y and H. Let's make it Y and H. Both of them are from different religions. This is not common. Why is it so? So first of all, you should actually mention this, write what you meant by this question. So it is two castes with high social value and social status and high financial status has now become common, but still interreligious marriages are not getting common. First of all, you should understand it is not making it popular because less true, because caste is also an easy thing, because when you have money and society status, then marriages becomes easy. So you should mention why interreligious marriages are difficult. One is the religious, because in India still now religions are watertight. They have different religious beliefs and practices, so the community as such is not accepting. So the next is the community sentiments, feeling of community, feeling that you are from Hindu community, you are from Muslim community, and marriage between Hindu and Muslim. It's not easy as we say in India. There are challenges because the community feeling and the social traditions, the community traditions, the practice, the customs, the mental sentiments, the thought process, the psychological thinking, stigma, acceptance. So all these are important points. How the society thinks, how the people think, how the society think, how the cultures are different, psychological impact. All these are negative points of why it's not common to see Hindu or Muslim marriage, because interreligious marriages is very difficult. So you have to bring in both the aspects. So break down the question and bring in all the aspects, then the question is ready to go. Okay, so that was ninth question. Moving on, in dealing with socio-economic issues of development, you can bring in what kind of collaboration between government, NGO, private sector would be most productive. First of all, you should have an idea. In dealing with socio-economic issues of development, what kind of collaboration between two people, one is the government at one, so one is the government already in place, and the next is the NGO, which is also a part of this, and the private sector would be the most productive. So dealing with socio-economic issue of development, what kind of collaboration? So always understand the three players are very, very important. Say, you can give in different illustration also. First of all, it's a good collaboration. You can even have different kind of collaborations like PPP, like the public-private participation or the public-private partnership can be brought in, and the NGO to government, NGO government participation can be brought in, and even CSR, the corporate social responsibility can be brought in. Because see, whatever there is a issue of development, the collaboration between three players, what are the three powers? The government definitely has that machinery, the power to make any decision happen. Because government can bring in policies, they can bring in development, they can bring in the policies, etc. NGO, what is the power of NGO? The NGOs definitely has the larger powers in the sense NGO has that grassroots level capacity. In this, they know people from the grassroots level. So NGO has that grassroots level capacity and grassroots level helping capacity. And private sector definitely has money, they have technology, and they have the willpower to make it happen. So when you happen, the government who is creating policy, the NGO who has grassroots level contacts, and private sector who has different capacities of money, technology, etc. to bring in development, like collaboration in socio development can really happen. Take an example, and you can even say that the Swachhata Bharat, the Swachh Bharat mission, the Clean India mission is also a good example of all three government, NGOs, and private sectors collaboration. And you can even take an example. There is a lack of clean water in a village. You don't have a clean water. The government provides funding and sets water quality standards. Very good. And NGOs work with the community to understand the needs and educates them on hygiene. They work with the people. The government already has the funds and has the water quality standards. NGOs work with the common people about hygiene awareness. Private sector builds water purification plant and maintains it. So this is a classic example of how a social development issue, all of them can come together. See, all of them can come together on a mutual basis. Or as I said, public-private partnership, you can say NGO-government partnership, corporate social responsibilities, in which larger companies give out money for development. All of this, all three of them can come together. So if you can bring in all these aspects, that would be really, really good. Okay, so moving on. Again, the next important question is regarding the Chola architecture. Again, a question from Indian history. Though the great Cholas are no more, yet their name is still remembered with great pride because their highest achievements in the domain of art and architecture. Comment, you have to write 250 words. From here onwards, 250 words, 15 mark question. So 2.5 pages you have to write definitely. So the Cholas are no more, yet their name is still remembered for great pride because of you have to write about art, architecture, about the Chola. Write a good introduction and then focus on the art and the other architecture portions of the Chola. First of all, you will definitely give an introduction about the Dravida architecture. You can easily mention about the Dravida architecture and you can bring in the architectural style. The Cholas were great patrons of architecture, the temples, and you can definitely bring in the Brihadeshwara temple. The Brihadeshwara temple of Tanjavur, you can bring in the Brihadeshwara temple. You can write about how beautiful the Vimana. All these are words in culture. You bring the Vimanas of Brihadeshwara temple are so beautiful to watch, and the wonderful Nandi statues. And you can even bring in the Gangai Konda Cholapuram temple, Brihadeshwara temple, and you can even mention the Airavateshwara temple. It's the Airavateshwara temple at Darasuram. All these are wonderful temples. You can mention about the Vimanas, and you can even talk about the sculpture. You can even talk about the sculptures like the use of granite, because there was it's near to Tamil Nadu. There was not even a place in those times. It was supplying granite, so that shows the interest in granite construction and the sculptures. And they also know the technique of lost wax technique, the Nataraja Vigraha. You should definitely write about the Chola sculptures and the lost wax techniques and the construction of the Nataraja Vigraha can also be brought in, and you can also create the Chola architecture also focused on the surroundings also. It gave immense importance to the surrounding, not only the architecture, surroundings like lake, ponds, and the mandapas. All this was actually created. That means Chola architecture gave importance to the surroundings, and even the Chola metallurgy. It's very important. The metallurgy of Cholas was, way beyond comprehension, and also some of the main vimana of the temple does not even cast a shadow, and the knowledge about acoustics, the architecture, they knew about the acoustics, because you can find a lot of musical pillars in this, and they even knew the concept of hydraulic engineering, because you take an example of water management and irrigation and temple tanks. Even the hydraulic engineering of the Cholas were very great. They had secret chambers and secret palaces and secret passages, not palaces, secret passages, and some of them have asked, some buildings even had astronomical alignments. With the movement of planets, with the movement of sun, moon, some of the buildings were even having astronomical alignment. So just imagine, how many points can we write about Chola architecture? If you can write in all the points, definitely that answer would have been a very good answer. And now let's take a close look at the First World War question, and I've got a wonderful example to tell you. How far is it correct to say that the First World War was fought essentially for the preservation of balance of power? The answer is absolutely right. There are different reasons for wars, but you can understand that the First World War, it was basically because balance of power. That means no one should actually be more powerful. Imagine the First World War during the time. This was a playground, like the playground that you see. Europe was a playground, and there are different children who are playing in the playground. They are different countries, like Britain, France, Austria, Hungary, Russia. They are different. Imagine that they are different people who are playing in the playground that you just saw are different countries. So according to them, what was the best important thing that they should be remembered? See, when you play in a playground, the biggest thing is that all of you should be equal. Imagine, see, I'm marking this girl. This girl has become more powerful. The girl that I marked called A has become very powerful. And in the playground, when A becomes powerful, what happens? A will bully other people. She will try to control the other kids. And that will not be liked by the other children. So what happens is, A started controlling. So what happens is, this child, and this girl, they form a group. They become B. Their ultimate interest, they have nothing else. Their ultimate interest is they cannot see A rising. They cannot see A growing, because that is the balance of power. So you can see some kids were bigger and stronger. So A in this case was slowly becoming Germany. You can say Germany. You can say Germany. A can be Germany, and the other kids who do not want A's growth, because I'm sure you must have seen this while you were playing. Some kids are very powerful, in some or the other way. So some kids were bigger and stronger, like Britain, France, Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Russia. To avoid any one kid becoming a bully and taking over the whole playground, the others would team up to keep things even. This is balance of power. Just because this girl has become powerful, all of the other kids have joined together. For what? To counter this girl called A. All of them have become B. This exactly happened in the First World War. All of them became countries. So that is it that you have to. And one of the main important reason was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. You know that. This was just a trigger. Just like we say 1857 battle, the Greece cartridge was an issue. Archduke Franz Ferdinand's assassination was just a starting point for that. The rest of the things was balance of power. So mainly, you can see the World War's ultimate contribution, you can see in the First World War, you should definitely have the great allies. There was allies, they were called as the allies, and the central powers, the Entente forces, the allies, the Great Britain, France, Russia, Italy, United States, Japan, Serbia, Belgium, Romania, Greece, Portugal on one side, and on the other side you have central powers like Germany, Austria, Hungary, Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria. All of them, and one, they are the central powers. So what happens is they wanted to preserve the status quo. That is again one important reason. And the fear of domination, balance of power, was also one of the main important reasons why they fought. And also you should note, and you should also write, apart from this, the Moroccan crisis. That is also very important. The Moroccan crisis during this time, and the Balkan Wars. If you have read the world history, you know the Balkan Wars and the Moroccan War crisis have also contributed for this. And rest of all, you can just make sure is the balance of power point itself. So that is one very, very important point that you should be knowing here. And next, 13th question is from, how far is the Industrial Revolution in England responsible for the decline of handicrafts and cottage industries in India? Is also a very important question. And apart from seeing this question as a world history question, you can see this question from economic impact of British rule. And you know how in one side you should have written this question, one side this is Britain, this is classic economic theory, and on the other side you have India. And you know that in the first phase, India was sending a lot of things to Britain like handicrafts, Indian cottage industries, Indian handicrafts, and Indian silk, Indian cloth, Indian cotton, which were high demand in Britain. And even in NCERT, NCERT Modern India, it say that people after some time, there was no house in England or London which did not have a thing from India. So it was very crazy. And after some time, what happened is the British people, the Industrial Revolution started, and the British system, or the British towns, the London or the British towns started having a lot of machinery, industrial plants, you'll call it as industrial machines, the spinning wheel, the spinning loom, the spinning jenny, new things were invented. But what happened is they did not have the raw materials. So what happened is British people who were doing this were sending this, the raw materials, the handicraft industry, etc. They banned it. This is it. In economic terms, they started putting barriers, high tariff rates, high rates, taxes, and they imposed fine. Even it said that any people who used Indian cotton, Indian dress could even face a jail sentence. They discouraged British people, and at this they banned it. And they banned it means kept the value high. Imagine that there is a 10 rupee thing which is actually going to London, and they have charged so much taxes and tariffs that when the good enters the British market, it becomes 1,000. So nobody is buying it. So they have increased the prices very bad. And what happened is automatically the people who are dependent on these industries, the traditional handicraft industry, cottage industry, everybody, they started to, that is a black incident for them. That was a heavy psychological blow for them. So this industry completely deteriorated. And what they happened is, they were having industrial machines, and they were having these machines means they were not having raw materials. So what happened is, apart from this traditional, they created another wave of export, sending items to Britain, and that was the raw material, the cotton, and all the things that were required for industrial machines to work in London. That was actually brought from India. Cloth, the basic cotton, jute, everything was transported from India to London on Britain. And finally, huge material, the industrial products which were created in machines, the dress, the new apparels, everything was sent from India, from Britain to India. That was actually taken from Britain to India, that was dumped here. And they abolished all the duties here. So there is, made it free. Anything can be dumped in India. So what happened is, they first of all, they completely destroyed the Indian handicraft demand, and later on they supplied the raw materials and finally used it in the industrial machines, made the finished goods and started to dump it in India. If you can write this thing, definitely the answer would be really good. So that is it. And next is moving on to the next question was regarding the geography, regarding the groundwater potential of the Gangetic Valley is something that you should be. The groundwater potential of the Gangetic Valley is on a serious decline. Maybe why you should take a look at this, how it may affect the food security of India. So, Gangetic Valley is one of the most fertile regions of India, and the groundwater potential of the Gangetic Valley is on a serious decline. So, that is something that we have to be discussing here. So, imagine that the Gangetic Valley is a giant underground water tank like this. It's an underground water tank, and the farmers use to water their crops. The tank is getting emptier each year. We are taking more water from this, but more water is not coming inside. That means the groundwater is depleting. So when you take more water from here, when you have more water coming inside, then it is good. You take out and new water is coming, it's a good thing. But it is becoming less reliable. Climate change is making rainfall patterns more erratic. You can just take a look at this. In this case, you can see are less reliable. So the new water is not coming, but the farmers are using the existing groundwater of the Gangetic Plain. So that is a serious issue. So remember, this is the concept here. And now let's take a look at it. Why you can actually see is why people are the water is not coming is because one of the important reason is climate variability. Because the recent lower precipitation, climate change is one of the important thing because low precipitation is filling in. So that is one important reason. And next is regarding the over extraction of groundwater. Over extraction of groundwater. The farmers are extracting more groundwater. That means obviously for agriculture it will actually coming less. And next is unregulated tube wells. You can even mention the tube wells. The unregulated tube wells. The tube well management system, because you know what you mean by tube well. It has penetrated in the groundwater extraction, and this is also a climate variability, over extraction of groundwater, more tube wells, and inefficient agriculture practice. It's also something written here. So you can say inefficient agriculture practices. Like there is a loss of water wastage, runoff, etc. So inefficient agriculture practice is also contributing to the groundwater extraction, and land use change and deforestation, all of this. And again, pollution and contamination is also, again, contamination and pollution. So let's bring in a lot of points: climate change, over extraction of groundwater, tube well, inefficient agriculture, deforestation, land use change, pollution, contamination. All of this has created this decline, as I've showed you in the picture. And how it may affect the food water is because, as you can see here, when the groundwater is declining, it is definitely affecting the agriculture. See, agriculture, food security. In order to have food security, you need agriculture. When there is no water at all, when the water is declining, then there is less water for agriculture. That means there will be no produce at all. There will be crop failures, and farmers might even shift from water intensive crops. When there is no water at all, farmers will shift from water intensive crops to less water intensive crops like sugarcane, maybe like rice, to other things. Like you can say they will move on to other nutritious options which is not water intensive. Then what happens is farmers will also get shifting to other important things, and then you can the income for farmers will drop. Again, you can write in the income for farmers will drop, and it can even lead to food inflation. It can even lead to food inflation, the rise of food prices. It can even lead to food inflation, and most of the agro-based industries will be affected. You can bring in the most of the agro-based industries will be affected here. Agro-based industries, food inflation, and it can even lead to soil salination. That's also another important food security. It can even lead to soil salination, and this is how there are many other points you can bring in. So these are the important how food security of India. So more agriculture will be impacted. The crop failures will happen. Farmers will shift from farm into less water crops to they will shift from the other crops, and food inflation, agro-based industries will be affected, and the prices will go up, So all this will affect the food security of India. If you can write down all these points, definitely that will be a great thing. And moving on to the next important question is, what are Aurora Australis and Aurora Borealis? I would say it as a current affair question. I don't know how many of you have seen. I'm just giving you the newspaper articles. The northern lights, Aurora Borealis, paints the skies of India, US and Europe. And the aurora seen over Ladakh's Hanley as intense solar storm hits Earth. It's also very important to be noted here. And northern lights spotted in India. Aurora Borealis illuminate Ladakh skies. So this is the main reason why this question was asked, and this is not an out-of-the-box question. From geography, you can say it's called Aurora Australis is the southern lights, you can say. Look at the colors, it's more of the colors. And the Aurora Borealis, it's the northern lights, as lights display in the higher latitude region. So please understand, Aurora Australis is the southern lights, and this is the Australis. This is the Australis. So remember, this is the Australis, and northern lights. Northern lights is Borealis. So you can say Borealis in the north. When you come down to south, it is Australis. It's easy to remember. I'll tell you one very easy way of remembering this. So always understand Australia. When you look at the world map here, you can see even you draw a world map like this, from India this side, you can see Australia in this side. So you can see Australia on the southern side, and this is on the northern side. So please remember, like Canada and the regions like that. So let's explain. So this is southern lights and northern lights, and let's explain this. Take a look at this. Even you can draw this picture also. Imagine that the sun as a giant ball of energy. This is a giant ball of energy. And this is constantly blowing out particles like gentle breeze. This is called solar winds. Let's imagine solar winds. So this is a giant ball of energy, and it is emitting solar winds or a gentle breeze, which is called, I marked in yellow. These can be called as the solar winds. Okay, this is a solar wind. And this is the earth here. Earth is already here. And you have a small outer bubble. Imagine that this is the bubble. And the earth it's a protective bubble. It's a protective bubble. So imagine that this is the protective bubble, and this is the magnetic field. This is the magnetic field. So it is a protective bubble across the earth. So what happens is, this solar winds or the particles wants to enter this earth. But due to this magnetic field, the protective bubble is not letting this solar flare get inside. But what happens is, you should know at some points in the north and south are weak, that some solar winds, you can say some solar streaks enter the bubble, enter the magnetic field. And you can say when these particles hit the air high up in the atmosphere, when this enter, they hit in the atmosphere, it's like tiny fireworks going on. So this particle comes in and it interacts in the atmosphere. Not everything, only some of them gets inside. When it gets inside, I think this example is clear. The magnetic, imagine that this bubble is magnetic field. Not all of this enters this, but some of them manages to enter this. When they enter, it interacts with the air and a fireworks goes. That is this Aurora Australis and Aurora Borealis. And you can take a look at this. The sun is the giant ball, and the solar wind. Earth has a protective bubble called the magnetic field, and the particles sneak at the poles. They actually sneak in the poles. They actually come in, and gases light up fireworks like aurora. They are the aurora. Please remember this. And you can see this is the reason why it happens. And Aurora Borealis, it can be seen in regions like Alaska, Canada, Iceland, Greenland, Scandinavia, and Russia. That I said you in the upper portion, and the downside in Australia, Antarctic, Tasmania, New Zealand, and Antarctica. So they always remember, in the Australian southern region we have the Australis, and the upper is Borealis. So I'm sure if you were able to maybe write down this whole content of geography, it would have been very easy. You could have definitely got marks for that. So that was all regarding, and take some points. Some of the lights, the green, the most common color caused by the excitation of oxygen atoms. It's because of the excitation of oxygen atoms. Red is caused by oxygen but at higher altitudes. Blue and purple color is due to the nitrogen molecules. So you can see here, red and green color is basically from oxygen, excitation with oxygen, and the blue and purple is basically because of the nitrogen molecules. So know about this. And let's move to the next important question from geography. Another interesting one. What is a twister? This is also another interesting question here. What is a twister? Why are the majority of twisters observed around the Gulf of Mexico? So this is also a question. So first of all, know that twister is nothing but it is very similar to the word tornado. You must have heard about cyclone. We have discussed tropical cyclone, just feel like cyclones, hurricane. You must have also heard about something called typhoons. Like tornado, it's very similar to that. Twister is very similar to tornado. Take a look at this. US was having hundreds of twisters reported in April, May. Tornado Alley. This is a very, very important region. This Tornado Alley is the important answer to the question why it is happening in the Gulf of Mexico. You should know what is the Tornado Alley. Where the tornado forms in the US is very important. Let's take a close look at this. Okay, imagine, I'm giving you another example. Imagine a pot boiling with water. Imagine a pot of boiling water. The heat makes the water rise. You can see the heat like warm air from the Gulf. Imagine it's a warm air from the Gulf. It can bring in. But what happens is because immediately, now imagining pouring cold water into the pot. Already heat was coming in. You pour in the cold water into this. This is like the cold air from Canada. So previously you checked in. It is the Gulf, warm air from the Gulf and the cold air from Canada. When you put, heat is coming, the cold is coming. When you put it together, it creates turbulence. Very, very important. It creates turbulence and swirling in the water. Like wind shear. I told you already what you mean by wind shear. Wind shear is the change in the wind speed at shorter distance with a change in altitude. So wind shear in the atmosphere. Sometimes this swirling can become so strong that it creates a whirlpool. It creates a big whirlpool, a complete rise or a vortex in the water. It is called this whirlpool. So in short, Gulf hot water, hot air or the hot water from Gulf and the cold air from Canada mixing together, creating more shear, like wind shear. It becomes so strong, it creates a whirlpool, it creates a vortex, and that is why it creates twisters. Very, very important. That is how we say we have twisters. So please remember. And now the most important thing is like why it is happening in the Gulf of Mexico is because I'll give you an example. Think of like baking a cake. Think like we want to bake a cake. You need certain ingredients and most important you need a number of ingredients for that. Just like to create twisters, you need some ingredients, and all these ingredients what ingredients do you need to make a cake? You need flour, you need egg, you need sugar. So all these things in order to make cake, in order to make a twister, all the ingredients are readily found in Gulf of Mexico. Number one is moist air. Very, very important. The number one is warm and moist air. It's the warm and moist air which can create thunderstorms. And then is the cold air. Then is the cold air. And definitely then is the wind shear. I told you what is wind shear. Wind shear is the change in direction of wind. Wind shear is also very, very important. So the combination of warm, moist, cold air from the north wind sheets creates the perfect conditions to form in the Gulf of Mexico. So in simple term, twister is just another name for tornado. Are very dangerous because they have powerful winds that can destroy buildings, uproot trees and throw cars around. Very, very, very. And all these things in this region is called as tornado, Gulf of Mexico region. It's a perfect, in the United States, all of this is happening together, and that is why this region is called Tornado Alley. And this is what is called as a twister. So you should be able to write this answer very clearly. And moving on to the, I would say the 17th, 18th, 19th and 20th questions are basically more society oriented questions, and in order to write this question you need to write the points very well. Only then you'll be able to write the answers very clearly. Okay, so what is regional disparity? How does it differ from diversity? How serious is the issue of regional disparity in India? That is something that you have to. So first of all, how many parts? You will write an introduction, you will write a conclusion. What are the important things you should write about regional disparity? And then you should make sure how is it. Then you should also write as what is diversity. What is regional disparity? Then you should write what is diversity in India. Then how is both differing? One, what is the difference between both? You have to write 3, and then you have to write how regional disparity is a serious issue. So 1, what is regional disparity? 2, what is diversity? Third one is what is the difference between regional disparity and diversity? Fourth one is what is the issue of regional disparity? How serious is that? 4 points with introduction and conclusion. That means 6 major divisions. If you have 6 major divisions in your answer, I'm sure there is no other chances, why they should not give you marks for this. So take that and let's go on. What is regional disparity? So you can say regional disparity is unequal distribution of resources. When you have unequal distribution of resources, it's a when you say it's unequal resources. When you have unequal resources, say at one point you have something called unequal. It's all unequal here. That is important. You have to write unequal. When you have unequal resources, when you have unequal opportunities, and you can say unequal development, everything is called regional disparities. Just imagine. Say I'll give an example. Say example of Kerala, and take an example of say Bihar. So you know that the health indicators are extremely different. The educational indicator is extremely different. So this is all regional disparity. It can be economical, it can be social, it can be cultural, it can be any type of financial. So, and take an example why some of the states like Maharashtra and Gujarat are economically more powerful than the other states, and some of the states are not as developed as other states. So take an example. So this is what is called as regional disparity. And what is diversity? You can definitely bring in means different culture, different different culture, different traditions, different festivals, everything. And you can even, I still remember the famous quote of Shashi Tharoor. He said, India is like a thali. India is like a thali meal, like you eat. There are different curries. You know how thali meals come. There are different curries like this. You can even mention this. If you want, you could have even mentioned this. It's like a thali meal. You have the paneer curry from one, you have the vegetable curry, you have the dal. India is like a sumptuous dish of thali. They have different colors. All of them have different colors, different taste and different origin, but still they are on the single thali. When you mix it with the rice or the roti, when you mix it, eat it together, it's a fantastic, enjoyable meal. So this is what diversity is all about. We have different people, different cultures, and how are they different? Disparity is all about creating that economical and something that is missing in many front. Diversity is our overall development in culture, ethnicity, and other important aspects. So you could have easily given out that, and now let's understand how serious is the issue of regional disparity. So you can mention in the sense economic. When you calculate the per capita income, so how serious is from an economic angle is very serious. Some of them have less per capita income, some of them have low growth rate. So this is again a regional disparity. Like Maharashtra is more stronger than, and Gujarat is more stronger than the other. And you can even bring in social aspects like some of them have better healthcare. Kerala has better healthcare. Some of them have better gender equality. Some of them have gender inequality, and some of them have higher literacy rates, and some of them have high developed. So you can even mention it political. From how serious is that from the regional disparity? From political aspect also is very important, because some states are very politically fragile. That is why some states or some regions in India still are demanding state status. You can even mention state status. That is disparity. They believe that they should be a state, but they are not a state. They are demanding statehood. So this is also another important aspect. So economically, socially, politically, from development angle. So all this is a serious issue. So regional disparity is definitely a serious issue. So if you can bring in all these points, definitely that would be a good thing to be writing it. And moving on to the next, the 18th question is when you bring in, despite comprehensive policies for equity and social justice, underprivileged, you can say the underprivileged sections are not yet getting the full benefits of affirmative action envisaged by the Constitution. So, despite comprehensive, so you will write, despite comprehensive policies for equity, for number one, equity and social justice, underprivileged sections are not getting the full benefits of affirmative actions. So, how do you break this question? So, it's all about underprivileged sections. You can bring in center. This is the underprivileged sections. This is the underprivileged sections. And according to the Constitution, at one point, you can say that according to the Constitution, they are actually in guarantee of lot of rights, a lot of policies which are exclusively for so according to the Constitution, give them a lot of policies and power. So what happens is this is created of giving underprivileged people equity, getting them up, and social justice. But still, Constitution, so who is actually Constitution wise there is getting a lot of people. So what happens is the government and the other people are trying to make this thing more stronger. They are making it more stronger so that it reaches the underprivileged people. So what happens is, that is why government has created an affirmative action here. They have created affirmative action means they have created action. So underprivileged people, Constitution gives them a lot of powers, gives them a lot of opportunity that should be given, and which is actually benefiting equity and social justice. And the government is actually creating a lot of measures to make it reach this underprivileged people like this. But it is actually said this process, this flow, which is supposed to be reaching them, is slow. That is the question here. This is slow. And this is slow in the sense this is not even working. This is not even slow means this is not working at all. This is slow and this is not at all working. This is something that you have to break this in the question. If you get this correctly, then this is absolutely perfect thing. And why do you think this is not getting there? So one of all, you can write as because of, you can say bureaucratic issues. Definitely there are a lot of bureaucratic issues. And you can bring in the red tape because more proactive governance need to be brought in, more bureaucratic issue, the red tapes, and more proactive. You should bring in more proactive measures need to be brought in for the people. That is something that we have to be discussing. And definitely you can say bring in the issue of corruption is also slowing down this. And lack of awareness is also very important. So before all this, you can even break down. See, whatever diagram that I've showed you, you can even draw the diagram and say this is how it works. And you should bring out who are the underprivileged sections. In India, who do you call the underprivileged sections? Define them. And then awareness is also very important because marginalized sections, most of them do not have awareness about their rights, the constitutional provisions for them. So at that, this is actually making it slow also. And again, social stigma is also another important thing. Because they believe it's the underprivileged sections, the social stigma still remains is also very, and you can also say at one point of time, then it is the lack of political will. You need more political will to make it happen. Bring in more political will and more concerted approach. That is why I said proactive approach is also important. And make sure that you should eliminate the policy gaps. Make sure you can eliminate the policy gap. See, whatever things that you have referred, the policy gap should also be brought in and control the patriarchal mindset of the people, especially my underprivileged section, the rise of women, etc. Cut down the patriarchal mindset and gender bias, cut down the gender bias, cut down the caste discrimination, So there is gender bias, patriarchal mindset, and the caste system. So all this needs to be. So first of all, you should draw what is the basis of the question, define what is underemployed section. Then you can see the bureaucratic issue, the red tape issue. You need more proactive support, and corruption is also an important lack of awareness, and the social stigma is also important, and cut down the policy gaps. Make sure it is more foolproof, and we need more political will. Cut down the patriarchal mindset, and you need to cut down the gender bias, cut down caste discrimination. If you can bring down all this thing into control, then the right growth will reach the people. It's a big, random thing that should be ideally got that. So definitely, I think you will get this answer. And 19th one is again relating to globalization. The globalization has increased urban migration by skilled, young, and unmarried women from various classes. How has this trend impacted their personal freedom and relationship with the family? So the question is very clear. Number one, globalization means at this point you have to write, this is a women based question. This is how you break the question. This is the women. This is the women from any class. And very clearly it says that it is skilled. It is skilled. They are young. And they are also unmarried. They are unmarried. This is irrespective of their class, region. It is irrespective of various classes, whether they are rich, poor, etc. Nothing to do with this. And here the globalization has come in. The globalization has come here. And this trend increase urban migration. So this is globalization has come in, and globalization has created more urban city. It has created an urban city. It has created an urban space. Sorry with my pen, it's not working that smoothly. So this is the urban stuff. Globalization has created more urban based cities which are more. So what happens is, here the women who are skilled, young, unmarried, nothing to do with this class, are migrating to the cities. This is migrating. So how has this trend impacted? So the question is very important. You have to break down this question. So they are migrating from this point to here. How is this affecting? Number one, the personal freedom. The impact on personal freedom. Then the family. It's a very nice question. First of all, a lot of people do not even understand this question. This is how it happens. So globalization, new cities, women, skilled, young, unmarried, has migrating. Definitely they will migrate, because when a woman is skilled, is young, unmarried, definitely when the woman is skilled and young, they'll get more jobs in many sectors in urban areas, like they'll get in IT, finance, entertainment, and lifestyle, and a lot of new sector jobs. They will be attracted towards that. And even from a perspective, when they are unmarried, means they have more, people say they don't have any other different focus. So like they don't have families, what will happen is they'll be more focused towards the work. So it will be good for the companies also. They'll get more dedicated pool of people who do not complain about people, children, family. So that is again something. So this is personal freedom, means they're getting a lot of other things, like they'll get a new relationship with the city, and they'll get new lifestyle, new entertaining. They can define themselves. They can redefine their character, redefine their personal goals, redefine their personal ambitions. All of it is personal freedom. They can travel, enjoy the nightlife, enjoy the city irrespective of the time. All this will actually, definitely there are challenges and risks also, that should also be written. And from a family perspective, definitely you can see sometimes it can also have strained family ties. They can actually send money to the family, which is also, you can bring in the economic angle of remittance. They'll actually send in a lot of money, will be coming from their daughters. They'll be actually coming in, so they'll actually get more financial interdependence, more money. You can send money to the family, and sometimes you can have good ties, and sometimes they get lost in the fastness and the splendor of the city. Sometimes both issues happen. Sometimes they lose in touch, and sometimes they control they make sure everything is in good hands, and that is why family dynamics, it's called family dynamics. Sometimes they get it right, sometimes they lost it, they completely lose it. They completely get cut off with the family. So this is, so most probably you can write about the good things of the family. The best thing is you can write the best things when you write this from the relationship with personal freedom. You can bring in both the things. There are good things, as well as challenges. And when the family also, you can write there are good things and challenges. You can bring in money, but definitely you lose the touch with the family. You can bring in both the touch. So when you bring in both the perspectives, I'm sure that will be a very good approach to the exam also. You can write down with a good conclusion also. That will be really good. And moving on to the last question here. That is a very good question that has actually been posed here. I would say critically analyze, let's take a look at this question. Critically analyze the proposition that there is a correlation between India's high cultural diversity and socio-economic marginalities. I'm sure most of the people who read this in the first instance will not be able to decode this question. The question paper was very easy, but some questions were twisted like this. So critically analyze. There is a correlation. See, there is a correlation. You can agree or disagree with that. That is your choice. It's critically analyzed. The statement says there is a correlation between India's high cultural diversity and socio-economic marginality. See, I've made this more easy for you. India is a very diverse country with many different cultures, many languages and religions, etc. This question is whether this diversity is somehow connected to the fact that many people in India are poor or disadvantaged. So can you say that? It's a very complex question because you cannot say it completely. See, India has got a lot of culture, India has got a lot of religions, and that is the reason why India is poor or disadvantaged. You cannot say that question. So maybe we can analyze this question from another angle. Maybe you can take a close look at this. Yes, okay. Let's take a look at this. Imagine a classroom, just have an idea. Imagine a classroom full of kids from different backgrounds. Some kids speak different languages, some speak Tamil, some speak Hindi, and some speak Malayalam, some speak Bengali. And some have different customs, like they have different customs, and some come from families of, they have different, I said they have different customs and different income levels. Different income levels. The fact that they are different doesn't automatically mean that they will do poorly in school. How can you say that? Imagine that. You have a person who is speaking Tamil or Malayalam, say Bengali. You have a person who is speaking Bengali. So you say that a person speaking Bengali from a poor family will always be bad at studies. Or a Hindi speaking girl who has a different custom, who is actually coming from a middle class, is more likely to study well. You cannot say that. Because that is why our cultural diversity and social marginality cannot be, it can be correlated, but you cannot say that there is a correlation between, you can say that. But sometimes it's a very difficult thing, but some cases you can say that. Imagine, there is a community called X. It's actually based in the mountains. They're actually living in the mountains and they are actually belonging to a very marginalized section. And you can primarily say that they have a very diverse culture, they have a very diverse customs, etc. But you can say that they are not performing well in the education. That can be true at some cases because basically they are not come into the forefront of development. They have not come into the forefront of development. So, you can also say that cultural diversity do not create poverty or any economic disadvantages, but there are certain exceptional cases also. So you can say, but imagine the classes case. You have Tamil, Hindi, Malayalam, Bengali, income, poor, middle class and rich people. But if some kids are bullied for being different, or if the teacher only speaks one language, then they can create barriers to learning. Imagine there are different category and the teacher is only speaking in Bengali. Definitely, when the teacher is speaking in Bengali, then they can be the Tamil students, the Malayali students, the Hindi students will not understand it. Then there is a barrier. So, some people you can take both conditions for this. One in favor, and when you critically analyze, one in favor and one are against. See, in favor means sometimes cultural diversity, just as I've gave an example of a community called X. They're not getting jobs, they're not getting education because they're completely cut off from the other people. So there are some cases it can happen. Cultural diversities and socio-economic marginalities definitely connect. And in some of the cases, it does not happen. In those cases, diversity is always a strength. Very important, you should bring in all these points. Diversity is always a strength. And ultimately, you can also sum it up. It's a very complicated relation. It definitely doesn't mean that every time it happens. So if you can, in this answer, if you can give an example like this, it will be really good. Come up with a good introduction. Try to break down the question. What is this? You can break down this question, and in possible, if you can give an in favor argument and against the argument. Bring in, you critically analyze it. In favor argument and against the argument, and then finally you can give out the conclusion as you say. It's a very complicated thing. It need not be always that. At one point, diversity is a strength, and at one point, at certain time, the exceptional cases, you can see that it can even create unequal opportunities and unequal employment opportunity, etc. So if you can bring down this perspective in the answer, it would have been a. So I've got the question paper print. So I've tried to answer all the questions. Maybe 20 questions we have discussed here, and I think we have come to the end of the session. I hope you please watch this session clearly. I've tried to break this in very detail. So do subscribe IS Factor, and if you're looking for 2025 answer writing, also we are starting the answer writing courses, and please do comment in this chat box. How did you like the question? And do watch. I'm going to come up with GS paper 2, 3 and 4. Okay, so keep watching the channel and do subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much and keep listening to IS Factor.